Hi, I'm Lauren Fitzmaurice. I am a left-handed calligrapher and lettering artist from Owensboro, Kentucky, and I absolutely love Tombow Dual Brush Pens. I've been using them for nearly 10 years and have taught thousands of people how to letter through my classes and workshops and my book, since I'm a published author. So I am so excited that you're here. I can't wait to share my top 10 tips for lettering with Tombow Dual Brush Pens. And so I will be teaching those to show you all of the basics and ins and outs of using this as a lettering tool. And then we will get to talk about the fun things like blending and adding different embellishments to our lettering to make it unique. And then we will finish off by creating our final project, which will be a mini banner for a celebration. So this will be so much fun. I can't wait to get started, and I am so glad that you are here to celebrate Tombow Dual Brush Pens 40th anniversary with me. So with that being said, make sure that you are following me at Renmade Calligraphy on Instagram and Tombow USA at Tombow USA on Instagram, and use the hashtag LearnWithTombow. Let's get going. Here are all of the supplies that you will need for today's class. I am starting with the dual brush pens, of course. They're the star of the show, and they are just amazing pens, so versatile. I'm going to be showing off the many ways to use them in today's class. And so this bright palette is really fun because it includes some amazing colors such as 755, 743, 933, 055, 133, 173, which, fun fact, that was the very first color of dual brush pen that I ever ordered. 403, 493, 665, and 636. So you can see they're really fun. On the back of the packaging, there's always really fun art, and it shows many different versatile ways that you can use the pens. So in addition to those pens, you're also going to need your tracing paper, and this tracing paper pairs perfectly with the worksheets from TombowUSA.com, so you'll need to go and download those. They're lettering practice worksheets for dual brush pens, and they teach you two different styles, so a lowercase and an uppercase, and it's just really whimsical and a great worksheet set for beginners. So you'll need to go and download those for free before starting the class. You'll also use your tracing paper, your mixed media paper, and I cut a little 5x7 because that's the size of our little mini banner that we're going to frame for our celebration. And then our dual brush pen pack, of course, N15 for a black color, and then we've got our Tombow mono drawing pencil in 2H that will be perfect to erase. If you make mistakes, it's just lighter and perfect for sketching. So I'm just really excited to get started. Here are all the supplies that you need. Grab them, and then I'll see you in a little bit. All right, let's get ready for lesson 1. We are going to start with my top 10 Tombow dual brush pen tips. And these are my top 10 suggestions of ways to really master the Tombow dual brush pen. I have used all of these tips myself. I really recommend them. They're very simple to follow, and they're just things that I really enjoy about these pens. They are wonderful, very durable, water-based brush pens, and so I love them all 112 beautiful colors of them. So I want to really showcase what they can do and how easy they are to really learn how to use, even though they seem really difficult and challenging at first. So with that being said, you will need your tracing paper right now. You will also need some mixed media paper to try out a few of the techniques that I'm explaining. You will also need your Tombow lettering practice worksheets. Make sure they are the ones for the dual brush pens so that they fit our pens that we are using. And that's really all you need. So I'm going to take you tip by tip through and kind of demonstrate each of the tips. So this will probably be one of the longer lessons of this workshop, but I wanted to also kind of put this disclosure out there. You may not listen to all 10 of these tips and do them in order. You may watch it, see what I do, and then go back and do your own thing and kind of learn them at your own pace. Some of these are very self-explanatory. Some of them will take practice. So just keep that in mind, have an open mind, and let's get going. So my top 10 tips are: number 1, to hold your pen correctly. Number 2, slow is fast. Number 3, tracing paper. Number 4, self-cleaning. Number 5, use both tips. Number 6, smooth surface. Number 7, anti-roll lid. Number 8, 3 numbers equals color. Number 9, watercolor. And number 10, basic strokes. These seem very clear and, short little tips, but believe me, trust me, they all make a lot of sense once I demonstrate them. So let's hop in. We're going to look at hold correctly first. So I am going to grab one of my dual brush pens, and I'm going to demonstrate holding it correctly. So when I am holding my pen, here is 755. Obviously it has 2 very different brush tips. So one is the flexible brush tip, the other is a bullet tip. It's more monoline style lettering, and you can do little fine details with it. So we are going to focus on both tips at some point, but the one we're going to really focus and target is the brush tip, because this is the hardest to master. And so when I'm holding a normal pen, I might hold really, really close to the tip. But when I'm holding a dual brush pen, I can't do that. And for a while, I was always focused on you're supposed to hold it 45 degrees from the paper. And yes, you are. You're supposed to hold it 45 degrees from the paper. But how do you know what 45 degrees is? And so I, over time, figured out, oh my goodness, there is a built-in benchmark on this dual brush pen that I never really paid attention to before. So I always put my grip around this picture of the brush tip. So it will feel a little awkward at first. You may not hold it exactly like me. Remember, I am left-handed, but the same distance on the pen works for people that are right-handed. So you may have to kind of play with it and see how it feels. But if I hold it like this, I'm going to get much better, thicker downstrokes than when I'm holding it closer to the tip. So important. So I'm going to grab a piece of my tracing paper, and I want to just demonstrate this. So you can see if I'm just doing a downstroke and I'm holding back here, look how thick that downstroke is. My upstroke, very, very thin. Downstroke, very, very thick. That is how it should be. If I were holding it closer, look how my downstroke would not be as thick. And I'm also going to end up fraying the tip of my pen because of the way that I'm holding it. So make sure you are doing light up, heavy down, and you're going to have to make sure that you hold it correctly. All right, so that was tip number 1. So we're going to kind of reset here and hop into tip number 2. Tip number 2 is slow is fast. So I'm going to kind of combine slow is fast and tracing paper together. That's tip number 3. So slow is fast is very, very, very self-explanatory, but super important. So when you are going to trace anything or try anything with the dual brush pen, you are really going to want to slow it down. It is natural to watch videos on Instagram and be like, oh my gosh, they're going so quickly, they're so fast, they're so great at lettering. But most of those artists that are going very quickly on Instagram actually sped up their video so that you could see a piece of art from start to finish, because it does take so much time. So I wanted to kind of showcase that. You can go on and grab a piece of your tracing paper, and I want you to see the diagonals. So these are more building blocks of letters. We call it lettering drills. And notice I literally have to change the direction of my pen, and I have to go slow or it does not look the way it should. When I actually get to writing words, you will also see if I write the word color, I do a stroke at a time. The slower that I go, the more I focus on those downstrokes and upstrokes, the less shaky it is, the better the lettering looks, the more consistent it is, and you're really going to be happier with your results that way. With that being said, I just showed you the beauty of tracing paper. I mean, how magnificent is it? It's amazing. You can literally trace everything over and over again. You can fill this entire paper up. It's like an unlimited worksheet, and I love it. So let's say I wanted to build a word, which we're going to have to do a little bit later. If I were to start to write the word celebrate, I literally can go to each of these letters and build my word by just moving my tracing paper. So I could literally just keep tracing it to build my word. So you can kind of see this celebrate would be really, really pretty. I can also mix it up, but it's amazing that I can literally move this around, trace however I need to, and then I have it still clean, and it keeps my brush tips looking fabulous and not frayed. So, win-win. Now we are ready for tip number 4. And tip number 4 is self-cleaning. So self-cleaning deals with blending, and self-cleaning is one reason why I am obsessed with these pens. So for this little tip, I want you can put that tracing paper to the side, and you can also put your worksheets to the side, and I am going to actually show you this mixed media paper. So I want to show you the way that these clean. I'm going to pick 2 different colors that are very different so that you can kind of see what happens when I mix them together. So I'm going to do something that's a little shocking, I know, but I'm going to color these together. Oh my goodness, you're saying, Lauren, why are you doing that? You're running your pens. Well, not really. I'm not really running my pens. So I will be able to blend these colors together, and they literally will self-clean. So you can see this normal teal, light blue looking color mixed with that red pink color, and it is really cleaning out as I use it. So it's getting lighter, and it also will do the same thing with this other color. You can see how beautiful that is. So you can mix the colors, you can blend them together, and all you have to do is really color those tips out, and that color will come right out, and they will self-clean with their water-based goodness, and they will be good to go and ready to use for your next project. So you can see how all that color came out, and we're good to go. We can put our lids back on, and it's amazing. So our next tip is to use both tips. Use both tips. And this is really, really important to remember because these are really versatile pens. So I'm going to continue showing you on this mixed media paper. I want to show you how versatile these pens can be. So you can simply just write in brush calligraphy. So I'm going to write the word brush. So if I'm writing this word, this is brush calligraphy because I am using the pressure in my arm to make thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes. But let's say I want to make them a little bit thicker. I can literally use that tip to thicken up those downstrokes and maybe thicken up the upstrokes a little bit. And it just makes them look a little bit cleaner, thicker, bolder. And so if you're wanting that bold look, you can definitely just kind of do some faux calligraphy added in on top of your brush calligraphy and just really use that brush tip to your advantage. And look how bold and bright this letter ends up looking. Look how that word just pops. So it's so easy to take a simple light lettering style and make it more bold just with that thick tip. The same flip side of that is the fine tip. You can create a shadow effect that's kind of monochromatic, meaning it's the same color. And if you go to the right and to the bottom, you can really just create that little shadow effect by drawing a very fine detailed line. And it really works so great. And it adds that nice little detail. It makes it look unique, but it really gives it a little something extra, and you're using that fine tip. Look how fun that is. I love it. Okay, so that's one way that you can use it. So you could use both tips together. You can also do what we call monoline lettering with this tip, and it looks so cute on little envelopes. So you can do the address. So monoline lettering is just all one width, no thick downstrokes. It's just all thin. And so it looks really clean and mixes nicely with brush calligraphy as well. Moving on to tip number 6. We've got 2 tips here, 6 and 7, that kind of go really well together. We're going to talk about the importance of smooth surfaces and the anti-roll lid. So the smooth surface is key. You do not want a surface that is going to tear up the tip of your pen. This mixed media paper is made, it's very, very soft and very easy on your brush pen tips. It's not quite as smooth as marker paper or tracing paper or inkjet paper, but it still is pretty good on your brush tips. Now, if you were to color on wood or color on rough paper or write on regular printer paper, these are going to wear out over time because they're really not designed for that. So those smooth surfaces are really going to be key. Another reason why a smooth surface is great is we have our blending palette. That's a smooth surface. If you have a smooth surface where you can color out, even on the packaging of your dual brush pens, you can use those as a blending palette. And so if you can color that on, you can actually use it for blending and doing lots of really cool things like watercolor, which I'll get into in a little bit. So smooth surfaces, super, super key with dual brush pens. Also, you've got your anti-roll lid. So it works because there's a little notch on the lid. And so if you just set it down, it will stop and it will not roll off the table because of that little notch. You also can put it on the other way and it will not roll, which is so cool. Very easy, simple tip, but very key. Tip number 8 is all about the 3 numbers. So these 3 numbers aren't just random. They actually go with each of the 112 colors of dual brush pens on the color chart. So you can see that they match up and you can kind of see where is 665. Okay, 665 is right here. I might want to match it with a shadow of 673. So you can easily see what pens you want to try, and I love using those numbers rather than just looking up a name because I can see how they all relate to each other and it's very easy to follow on the chart. I love it. All right, so number 9 is really, really fun. I love it, and we're not going to do a ton of it because, you know, time. And we're not really incorporating this in our project that much, but I wanted to go in and show you some watercolor. So as you can see, this is loved. This is one of my water brushes, and it's one that I tend to use for thicker lettering. So I just colored that 665 on my blending palette. I'm mixing it with a few little colors there, and I'm just going to demonstrate that I can literally paint watercolor with this. And this is one of those thicker brushes. But you can see how fun this really is, and you can even add in little details with watercolor, or you can try to kind of make it look a little bit more finished with the water. Since they're water-based, you can move the ink around, and if you literally paint over the words that you write, sometimes it even makes it look like it was originally watercolored, which is a really cool effect. So with that being said, this is a big game changer with these pens. There's not many out there that can do the same, and I absolutely love the effect that this gives. So, so great. And finally, my final tip that will bring us back to our worksheets is number 10, basic strokes. Basic strokes are key to learning your letter forms, which we will get to in just a little bit. So, with that being said, let's look at the basic strokes that we have here. This is our lettering practice worksheet. You can get a clean piece of tracing paper from your little stack on your table. And you can go on and cover it up. We're going to put our water brush to the side and grab a color. I think I'm going to use 636, beautiful purple color. So I'm going to hold it like we talked about, and then I'm going to do my down strokes thick, my up strokes thin. Most letters have those downstrokes and upstrokes in them, or all letters do. A lot of letters have diagonals, so I'm actually going to go up, and then I'm going to change direction of my tip and come down with pressure. Up easy, down hard. Up easy, down with pressure. And you can see how I did that. Another really important stroke is the compound curve. So this is, you go up, you transition slowly, down heavy, up light, down heavy, up light, down heavy, up light. Okay, so you can see how important that is. Lots of lowercase letters. A's, U's, N's, M's have this. So it's really, really important to master this. A common problem is sometimes to have a little notch at this part. So if you do that slow is fast technique, it's going to be much easier to get that. Then you've got your oval. And you want your ovals to be consistent. You don't want them to be eggs. You don't want them to be raindrops. You want to be able to add those ovals to your other strokes to make them a letter. So I want to show you two more that are not on this. You've got your A cinder loop. You've got your D cinder loop. And so those are super duper important as well. So if you combine those together, they make letters. So for example, I can kind of move this over so you can see. If I am to do an oval plus an A cinder loop, it makes a D. So the more that you practice those basic strokes, the easier the letter forms will come to you. And those, my friends, are my top 10 Tombow Dual Brush Pen tips. Make sure you follow them. Make sure you try them out. I live by them. I use them all the time, and I love these pens. So make sure to kind of rewatch these tips individually if you need to. Try them out. And we will move on to our next lesson and explore some lettering styles. All right, it's time for us to practice some lettering styles. So I'm going to be showing you these on some lettering practice worksheets for dual brush pens. You'll also want to have some tracing paper handy, and let's go on and hop in. So I'm going to grab a piece of my tracing paper, and I'm going to place it over the blank sheet of my lettering practice worksheets. And I tend to like to just keep them in a stack, but I'm going to put my stack over to the side so that nothing bleeds through here. While I'm trying to write on here, I don't want you to be able to see the sheets underneath. So with that being said, I am going to grab a dual brush pen. I'm going to use 743, and I want to model for you several different styles that I use a lot. So one of them is script, and this script on these worksheets is so easy to learn. It's a great beginner style, and it really fits nicely for a mini banner like what we are going to be creating a little bit later as our project. So you have your lowercase letters, you have your uppercase letters, and it's just a great place to start. So you're going to be able to trace these a little bit later, and I'll show you kind of how to use these worksheets in several different ways. But first I want to model to you the different styles of lettering that I enjoy using. So first, the brush script is what we've already been talking about. So I'm actually just going to write script, and you can see that this is being formed by holding it about 45 degrees from the paper. There we go. That's the script style. Very, very close to cursive, using a lot of those basic strokes that we talked about earlier. Now, another one that I love is the sans serif. Sans serif means basically without a serif. And this is like a block style. So any capital letters that look really clean would be in that sans serif category. I tend to really love to do this style on posters, banners, different things like envelopes. Sometimes it's fun to mix it up. And so that's a really fun style. Another one is the serif style. And so this is basically a block style. But then once I am done, I'm going to add my little serifs to my letters. And I will show you what that means. They're little decorative strokes. All right, so these little serifs kind of make it look more like a font. You've probably heard serif before when it comes to different names of fonts. And so you can see that's really decorative. It looks a little bit more ornate, more complex than the sans serif. Not quite as easy to read, but definitely fun to write with. And then finally, we are going to talk about the style I already showed you, which is monoline. And monoline lettering is super duper fun. I love to use it on addresses, as I already said. But sometimes it's just fun to write a fun little list or quote in a simple style. And there's your monoline. Now, another thing that I absolutely adore is creating shadows. And on our final project today, we are actually going to create a shadow. And so I want to demonstrate how to do that right now. So I'm going to write the word shadow, and then I'm going to pick another color to create a shadow. Now, I'm going to be doing two different colors right now, and the reason is that I have really been enjoying creating double shadows. And I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's really not. And it won't be as easy since this is a little bit smaller and I used a script style. But I'm going to kind of show you what to do first with one color. So you're going to go to the one side of the letter as if a light is shining from the left side. It would create a shadow, if they were 3D, on the right side and to the bottom. So I'm going to do my shadow to the right and on the bottom. To the right of each letter and on the bottom. And so you can see that this really creates that shadow effect. It adds a nice contrast to your colors. It's really fun. And it's really not that difficult to figure out. I love doing shadow lettering. It's one of my favorite tricks. So that is one color. Now, if you're wanting to create a double shadow with two colors, I like to pick a little bit different shade of the color and just layer it along the other color. And so you can see it just gives it a little bit more dimension. Since they're very similar, it does kind of blend in with that darker purple, but it is a lot of fun. And on bigger lettering, it can really add a lot to do that double shadow. As you can see, shadowing, it takes some time. It takes some practice for it to look polished and professional. But it's super fun. And there you have it. There's my double shadow. And what I most of the time do whenever I'm done, just to smooth this up, I'll go back through and kind of redo the pink on top and just kind of smoothen up everything. And it'll make it look more filled in and more polished, and it'll look really great. So that's a great technique. Now, when it comes to learning these styles, what I recommend you doing is I'm not going to take you step by step through the letters and show you how to form all of them. You can take your time kind of going through and forming all of these letters, looking through and seeing how you would like to create different styles. But I would recommend taking a piece of tracing paper and really just trying each of the letter forms. So if you do your oval and your compound curve the way that we went through earlier in the basics, then you will be able to build those letters, that A, the way that it looks consistently. The B, so I would just keep tracing. If I didn't like the way that a B looked, I could even add something to it or do something a little different. So I tend to kind of make a little flourish out of my B sometimes. So you can really make it your own. Give it some flair, give it some pizzazz. Do a little flourish here and there. Make it fun. Okay, so that is the basics of lettering styles. And so I challenge you to play around with these. Trace them, see what feels great for you. Try writing through the whole alphabet. Try matching up some letters to make some words. And I'll see you at the next lesson, which will be blending and playing with color. All right, it's time for us to blend and play with color. So I'm going to teach you two different ways that I enjoy blending my dual brush pens together. And one of those ways, there's actually two different techniques to do it, one with a blending palette and one without. So we are going to get started with two-toned blending first. So what you'll need for this exercise is you're going to need two different colors of your dual brush pens. I like to look for colors that are slightly different. So you can see I have one that's in the 700s and one that's in the 400s. They probably will blend really nice together. They should be different, and they're not right next to each other on the color chart. So I think that it will be fun to see what happens with these two colors when they blend together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to need these. I'm going to need my blending palette. I'm going to need my mixed media paper, and I'm going to need some tracing paper possibly, but maybe not, just depending on if I need any tracing or I need to do anything else with those markers. I just like to always have tracing paper handy. And it's also really great for coloring out the color, and it like soaks right into that tracing paper, and it's very smooth on the tips. So coloring out the color, I'm not going to fray those tips on the tracing paper. With that being said, what we're going to do first is that two-tone blending. So I'm going to first do it with the blending palette, and I'm going to take my darker color and I'm going to just color it on. You can see it's kind of mixing with some other colors on there, which is totally fine. And then I'm going to take 743 and I'm going to go to that blending palette and I'm going to pick up that blue color, that 403. And you can see it's already having a little bit of that mixing effect on the blending palette. So I am going to write the word blend, and you can see that beautiful purple color is mixing out of that blue and the pink. Oh, it's so beautiful. And if it starts going out and I want to add a little bit more of that blue, I can pick some more up from that blending palette. Beautiful. And you can see it's got like an ombre effect. So this is one way to do two-tone lettering. If I want to color that out, I'm going to just kind of color it out on my tracing paper. Use it kind of as a blotter to kind of clean that tip out so it's ready. And I can also do this by coloring the two pen tips together. And I already kind of demonstrated this earlier, but this is really fun. So this is another way to blend. And I'm just going to say again because we're blending again, and you can see that same technique gets a very similar effect, but I kind of let it run out so it goes from purple to pink, which is really, really fun. There you go. So those are two ways to blend for that two-tone blending. And another way that I really enjoy blending is doing it with direct blending. So I'm going to write direct, and some of that blue is still coming out. So here is direct blending. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write a word with one color. Then I'm going to take my other color and I'm going to color directly on with that other color. Now you can see I'm not doing a lot of it because this is water-based ink. So when you start coloring on it, it's going to move and it's going to turn all that pink a different color. So then I'm going to actually take that pink, that original color, and I'm going to move the color that I just colored on. So, and it takes a little bit of time to get it to kind of blend, and you can color it and keep blending and just keep trying to blend the two colors together. And you can see over time, these were very different colors, so I could even add in another color to try to make it go. But over time, I would be able to move that color along, and it would make that very direct blend in the letters. So today in our project, I'm actually going to be doing the two-toned, and I will most likely be using my blending palette so that I get a more dramatic ombre effect. but I love this effect. This is the one, this is my go-to. This is the one I love the most, but all three are really great. All right, let's move on and go to our fourth lesson, which is going from letters to words. Okay, now we are going to go back to our lettering practice worksheets, and we are going to look at these lettering styles that we have and try to build some words from them. So you can kind of see some very basic ways of doing this. We know our basic CVC words like dad or cab that we can do from A, B, and C. But what I'm going to do is I am going to start writing the word cat. So I'm going to pair these words or these letters up so you can kind of go and just try different letter forms. Try kind of spacing them together. This is why I love tracing paper so much, because I can easily build words. Now, it's a very simple, clean style, but there's other ways that we can do it too. So if I'm going to build cat with capital letters, I can do it the exact same way that I just showed you. So all I would have to do is go to my uppercase alphabet. I'm going to go to my capital C. Then I'm going to go to my capital A. And notice that spacing, I'm trying to keep it very consistent. And then I'm going to go to my capital T, and I'll have to flip just a little bit to get there. So here's my capital T. So you can see how adding some letters together to make words can be really, really simple. It can also be really, really complicated. So just try to keep it simple at this point. Come up with a few words you want to try. I am going to try the words celebrate and party and hooray, all of those celebration type words for my banner. And so let's both try some of those, and then we'll meet back in just a little bit and be ready to make our composition. Use those worksheets, build those words, and keep doing your best, friends. It's time to kind of sketch out what we want to do as our final piece. And so here are all the different letters and words that I kind of made that went with the theme of celebration. And so I think I'm going to go in and do a sketch for the word hooray, because it's a really great beginner word. It's shorter. It's going to be a lot easier to fit across the 5x7 and not be jumbled or look like too thick in places. So I think this will be a really great place to start. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just draw out some little thumbnails of the word hooray. And so as I do that, I'm just going to draw out some little rectangles. And so I like to kind of draw some midlines and kind of decide where I'm going to put the final piece. And I want it to kind of just flow right around the center and be one big kind of word right down the center. I think I'm going to mix some styles. I may even use a few serifs in here just for fun. And I'll mix maybe some script O's might be fun. And then a fun R. And then I'm not going to worry too much about my letters being perfect, but I want to do that script Y because I think that'll be fun. Okay, so I'm liking this, but I think there's some other ways that I might be able to embellish it. And so I'm going to just kind of sketch out the actual word here. Of course, it's not super pretty here, but I could maybe do some dots, and I'm kind of wanting to do some kind of embellishment here and here to kind of balance the piece. So that's my first option. Or for my second option, I might do hooray again. But what if I use the brush tip and just made some fun confetti lettering? So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the brush tip and do some confetti lettering on here. So I'll just kind of show you, just kind of sprinkle some different colors from the 10 pack. And it's going to be really fun and make it whimsical and not have to be super perfect, but I'm just going to want to make sure that I balance those. So if I put some past this line over here, I need to make sure I keep going past this line about the same amount. There you go. So I think this is going to be my final piece here. And so I will be ready to go on and sketch in just a second on my piece right here, the 5x7. And so I'm going to kind of clear off my area and get this kind of set up. So go on in, kind of sketch yours, decide what you want to do for your word, and then I will be here when you are done. So now it is time to sketch out our piece. And so I have my little 5x7 here and my Tombow mono drawing pencil in 2H, and I am ready to get started. I am going to just very lightly sketch my letters the way that I want them to be on the paper. So I'm going to kind of hold this and I'll kind of turn my paper so that it's comfortable for me. You do whatever you need to make it comfortable for you. And I'm going to very lightly sketch because I am going to use some brighter colors, and if I sketch really light, I may not have to erase much. And really, I'm just using this to kind of know where I am on the page to make sure I have enough space. And so up here, you can see that my O kind of went to almost the midline of the paper. So I'm going to make sure that my O pretty much goes that same place, doesn't go too far past that paper, so that my piece looks really balanced. And I'm just going to keep sketching. And it's like a fun style. It's not perfect, but it's very whimsical. All right, so there's hooray. So I will be ready to add color to this in just a second, but I really like the way that that sketch turned out. It's very light, so it'll be perfect to add color to. Go on and press pause, make sure you have sketched, and I'll be back here when you are ready. Now it's time to go on and ink up our final piece. And so I have my sketch there. I wrote out hooray with my mono drawing pencil. And so now I'm super excited to get the colors on. So I'm going to do 6 different colors for the 6 different letters. And I'm going to go in and get out my bright pack out of the case and kind of pick out which colors I want. Go in and press pause, and I'll be here when you get back. Today I have decided to go with all of these 6 colors. So I'm going to use 755, 403, 933, 665, 743, and 173. And then I'm going to use N15 to kind of outline my letters. Then I'm going to use N15 to kind of outline the letters and make them pop. And then I'm going to use 055 as like a yellow shadow. So that'll be a lot of fun to add to my letters. All right, so now I'm going to start going in order. I decided to start with 755. All right, so now I'm going to start going in order. I decided to start with 755. I'm going to just go in and add on my base color. I'm going to do down hard. I'm going to do really light little embellishments, and I can even do a double brush stroke just to make it sure it's nice and thick on those down strokes. And I can color them in and make sure it looks nice. I'm going to do this one also really nice and thick. I want it to be a bold, playful lettering. And then I always do crossbars, kind of light, but I really like this bold little embellishment off to the side. And so I'm going to make sure to kind of do that. So there is my H. So next I'm going to actually use 403, and that's a nice blue color. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do down hard, up easy, and slightly, just a little bit of a thickness there. But I'm going to kind of make my downstroke just a little bit thicker there. So whenever I outline it, it's bold and fun, and it doesn't look completely lost in all the embellishments that I'm going to add. So I'm just going to keep doing this for all of my different letters. Letter one part at a time. Make it look the way that you want it to. Color it in. You can use both tips if you need to, just to add those embellishments. And just make it look exactly how you want it to look. So once I go through all of these colors, I am going to be ready to go on and outline. And I actually am going to add my shadow first with the yellow. And the reason being is that whenever I add the black on top, sometimes when I add that yellow shadow, it's going to make the yellow a little dark because these are water-based pens, and I do want to make sure that I am smart about which letter and which color I use first, because if I use a really dark color and then try to use a light color with it, it'll probably pull that dark color through my piece. So and it's not the worst thing. You could definitely do it, but I'm just going to be really cautious whenever I am lettering that part. So I think I'll start with the shadow first and then go in and add my final outline just to make it pop. So here is the final base letters. So you can see they're really bold, they're really fun, and I really like how they look. I love how it turned out. So you can actually go back in and layer it, just make it look a little bit thicker, a little bit bolder. Keep adding until you're happy with it. Go in and press pause, and I will be back to show you exactly how to add the shadow. So now it's time to take our 055 dual brush pen, and we are going to just add a shadow to the right and the bottom of every letter. And so this is one of my favorite things to do to embellish lettering, and I'm not going to be too worried about making it line up exactly with the letter because it isn't going to be like the last thing that I add. I'm actually going to be outlining all of the letters in black in a little bit, so I don't have to make it absolutely perfect. I just want it to be a fun little pop of color. So with that being said, I'm going to go on and just add that to the right. So you can see I'm going to add it to the right and the bottom of each part of my letter. And I am leaving just a little bit of a gap there because, like I said, I am outlining it in black and I don't really want the color to move a lot. So I don't want that yellow to go into the pink and I don't want the pink to go into the yellow. So I'm not going to worry too much if any of the color moves, but I just want to make that nice little shadow. To the right and the bottom of the letter. So you can see it really makes a nice little pop of color and it just adds a little fun to the piece. So I'm just going to keep adding all of this shadowing to the right and the bottom. It's almost as if I am shining a light over here to the left and there is a shadow on my 3D letters, and so they're reflecting like a little bit of a shadow on the other side. And so that's the effect that I'm going for, just a shadowing effect. But I think it really does make it pop and make it stand out. And it's a very purposeful use of color. I'm not just adding random pieces of yellow. I'm putting it in a very purposeful spot. So it's really going to make a nice pop of color and it's going to look like I knew exactly where I was adding it for that purpose. So here we go. I'm completely done adding my little shadow. I could go back in and add whatever else I need to, but I'm really happy with the way that it looks. So I'm ready for the last couple of steps. Go on and pause, make sure yours are ready to roll, your shadow looks fabulous, and meet me back with your darker brush pen so we can do some outlining. So now we're going to grab that N15 dual brush pen, so that darker color, and I'm actually going to use the other tip of that brush pen. So it's going to be a little bit finer and it's going to be better for outlining and adding fine details. Now I'm going to go in and tell you not to push down really hard on these. Make sure that you are just outlining the very edge of that base letter. And you can see I'm not going on the outside of the shadow. I'm just going on the base letter that I did initially in the bright color. Now, being left-handed, a lot of times I would start over on the right of the letter, but since I went on and started over here on the very left side of the paper, I'm just going to make sure that I take my time and go really, really slow. Slow as fast, as I talked to you about before. I'm just going to add that outline very, very slowly. It's going to be really bold and really make that letter pop, but I want to make sure, especially on the smaller parts or crossbars of the letters, that I'm not making it look too heavy. I don't want it to be super duper thick because I don't want it to look like, why did she add all of that black? I just want it to be a nice subtle little outline. And if you accidentally kind of do too much, you can go back in and add or thicken up different parts. But it's totally fine for it not to be absolutely perfect. You can go back in and kind of fill in where there's gaps in color. I really like the way that this one over here looks, but I'm just going to thicken it up just a tiny bit to make it match the other parts of my letter. that got a little bit thicker than what I was wanting. So you can see exactly what to do there, and you're just going to continue and add that black outline all the way through. So as I do that, I am just making sure that my hand does not go through any of that ink, because it will take a little bit of time to dry. And I love how much contrast it really gives all of the letters. It just gives it a more finished look, makes it look like, oh man, she really has those lettering skills. But as you can see, it's really not that hard to do. So go on and add all of your outlining to your letters. You can go in and pause here, and I will meet you back with our complete outline letters, and we will be ready to add the confetti. So the final step is figuring out what embellishments you want to add around. So I'm going to show you right now how to create the confetti lettering that I'm wanting to do. And when I say confetti lettering, it just means it's like a little confetti effect. I am actually using the same effect that I do, the same amount of pressure that I do when I'm doing brush calligraphy. And so I am going to kind of sprinkle in different colors. And when you do this, you're going to want to almost mirror this corner with its opposite corner, so it's very balanced. So if I did those two pinks up here, I'm going to actually come down here and try to kind of not do exactly mirroring, but just kind of making sure that it's balanced and it has very similar colors featured in both areas of the piece. So you can see how confetti lettering would work. And so once you're done, you'll pick which colors you want to use. Obviously, I'm not going to use the black, but I'm going to use all the other 6 colors that I decided on. And so I'm going to add those to the corners. So you can see the final product here. I actually added in all 6 colors, and if I wanted to kind of make sure that it was a little more balanced, I can go back in and add a few different colors, different places, but for the most part, I'm really happy with it. So this is the final product, and it's ready to be framed and added to any celebration. Thank you so much again for joining me. That was a blast. I am so glad that I was able to kind of take you through the steps of using the Tombow Dual Brush Pen, and hopefully I gave you some inspiring tips and tricks that maybe you didn't already know, or something useful to kind of take a different spin on lettering that you want to try more of. So I'm so grateful that you were here. Make sure that you are following me at Renmade Calligraphy on Instagram, and Tombow USA at Tombow USA on Instagram, and use the hashtag LearnWithTombow so that we can see what you created in this class. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again. Bye.